Hi everyone. So we are here to go over some practice problems that align to Eureka Grade 4, Module 6, Lesson 10, or specifically what we went over at the community on April 21st. We'll be using Khan Academy to do this. Specifically, we are in their 4th grade Eureka module, Module 6, Topic C, and we're practicing comparing our decimals visually. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this one. We're trying to compare 3/10 to 30/100. Let's go ahead and show that on our grid. So if I want 3/10, I see that these are tenths, so I could do 1, 2, 3. Okay, there's my 3/10. Making sure I try to color it as best as I can. All right, there's my 3/10, or I need 30/100. Okay, I see that these are 10/100, 20/100, 30/100. All right, and so we can see from our visual models, after I clear that up just a little bit, we can see from our visual models that 30/100 is the same as 3/10. They both take up those first 3 rows. We can prove this operationally by writing them as fractions. So if I have 3/10 and I'm trying to prove that it's equivalent or the same as 30/100, remember, we can use our identity property. The identity property says that I can multiply or divide by a version of 1 and my value remains the same. I can multiply by 10/10, which is a version of 1. 3 times 10 gets me that 30. 10 times 10 gets me that 100. So I know that they are equivalent. All right, let's go ahead and put that in there, and we will move me up here so that way we can check ourselves. And yes, we got it right. All right, let's do another one, this time on our number line. All right, so I have 6 and 52/100, 6 and 45/100. Okay, so I see that on my number line, only my tenths are marked, 6 and 4/10, 6 and 5/10, 6 and 6/10. And then in between my tenths, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sections. So if my tenths are split into 10 sections, I know that must be 10/100 because 1/10 is the same as 10/100. Okay, so now that I know that these are my hundreds, we can go ahead and plot. Okay, so if I have 6 and 52/100, well, that's 6 and 5/10. Let's go ahead and make a quick little place value chart to help us with this. All right, so I have my ones, I have my tenths, and I have my hundredths. All right, so let's go ahead and fill in our 6 and 52/100. Let me put in a different color just to make it easier for us. All right, so there's my 6 and 52/100. Okay, that means that I have 6. Okay, we all have 6s here. 5/10, and then 2/100. 1, 2. So here is my 6 and 52/100 because I have 200s. Let's do that 6 and 45/100. I have that 6 and 45/100. I name my decimal by saying that last place value. And so I have 6 and 4/10, and then 5/100. 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. All right, so if this is 6 and 45/100 and this is 6 and 52/100, we can see that 6 and 52/100 is greater. And that also makes sense because 52 is greater than 45. So since my wholes are the same, I look at my next greatest place value, which would be my tenths. 5/10 is greater than 4/10. All right, let's check ourselves, and we got it right. All right, let's go ahead and clear our screen and try 1 or 2 more. All right, great. Here's another one with our decimal grids. Okay, this time I'm doing 3/10 and 65/100. Okay, if I have that 3/10, here's my tenths. There's 1. Oh man, this moon is such a messy color on the screen. 1/10, 2/10, and 3/10. Okay, so there's my 3/10. Oh, I was doing so well. All right, there's my 3/10. And now let's do my 65/100. Okay, I know that each of these is 10/100. So there's 10/100, 20/100, 30/100, 40/100, 50/100, 60 hundredths, and then 61, 2, 3, 4, 5 hundredths. Okay, so obviously we can tell that the 65 hundredths is greater because there's more colored in. We could also think about it as 3 tenths versus 65 hundredths. Again, I'm looking at that greatest place value to start comparing. 0, 0, those are the same. I move to my next greatest place value, which is my tenth. 3 tenths versus 6 tenths. 6 tenths is greater, which means that overall our 65 hundredths is greater. We could have also changed or renamed, that 3 tenths into 30 hundredths, because remember, if I have my 3 tenths, that is going to be the same as 30 hundredths, because I multiply by 10 tenths, or a version of 1. And then we can see that 30 hundredths would be less than 65 hundredths, since we're just comparing our same value now. And we are correct. Let's go ahead and do one last one together in terms of our comparison. All right, so once again, we have that 5 tenths and that 52 hundredths. Let's actually try to do it without these decimal grids. I want to go ahead and make these the same unit just because that makes it easier for me, because then it's just like when we compare our integers, which is what we are most comfortable with. All right, so we have our 5 tenths, and then we have our 52 hundredths. I want to go ahead and change it into my smallest value. So I need to make my 5 tenths. Again, I'm going to write it as our fraction, to my hundredths, okay? How do I go from 10 to 100? Well, I multiply by 10 because I count by 10 times. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top, so that way I make sure that I'm multiplying by a version of 1. And the identity property tells me that I can multiply by a version of 1, and the value does not change. 5 times 10 gives me that 50. So now I'm comparing 50 hundredths versus 52 hundredths, and we can see that that 52 hundredths is greater because 52 is greater than 50. And we got that one right as well. All right, again, friends, this was just going over Eureka Grade 4, Module 6, Lesson 10, or specifically what our community went over on April 21st. I hope this was helpful and that this will help you complete your practice activity. And as always, just let me know if there's anything that I can do to help. Thanks so much.